My friends, now that I showed you my British shoes, because she is married to a very dear friend of mine, Clive, who is British, Balfour Declaration, the proudest Jewish woman in all of New York, who wears her Magen David and has her daughter in college wearing a Magen David, even on a hostile campus. Lady Anya Gillinson is the newly published author of Dreaming in Russian. I don't know anyone who goes to every major cultural event in New York wearing a giant Magen David. Anya, we love you. You inspire us all. My friends, give it up for Lady Anya Gillinson.
Today, my heart is with Israel and the Israeli people, just like it has been every day for the past year, but today even more so. Our hostages are still suffering in the tunnels of our enemy. Our eyes are still filled with tears. Our hearts are heavy with unbearable pain. Our minds are clouded with sadness over the loss of life so brutally taken from us exactly 1 year ago. And yet, despite all this, we, the Jewish nation, headed by the State of Israel, have demonstrated to the world that we will not give up and that we have not forgotten how to fight back. Our unwavering goal remains to protect our Jewish homeland, our Jewish freedom, and the voice of the Jewish communities in the diaspora from another Holocaust. Israel faces a multifaceted war, fighting on multiple fronts, both from in the north and in the south. Additionally, we confront an ongoing battle against incurable, uneducated, fanatical anti-Semites and anti-Zionists. These individuals indulge themselves by either falsely perceiving themselves as victims or brave fighters for peace and justice against white Zionist oppressors and colonizers, as they love to call us. Every day since October 7th, Israel has been fighting social media, which systematically and systemically promotes the destruction of Israel's exemplary moral values to fit its own narrative, founded on the same anti-Semitic and anti-Zionist rhetoric. A year ago, Jewish nation endured one of its darkest hours since the Holocaust. Despite the world's tepid sympathy, including most inadequate support from the United States and widespread condemnation of Israel's response to the attack, Israel has remained defiant in the face of relentless pressure from anti-Zionist and various hypocritical forces. These forces, including the farcical United Nations with its cowardly head, its international court of injustice, and prominent figures from around the world, including many American politicians of Jewish descent, all of whom have sought to undermine Israel's right to exist. Still, against all odds, Israel has dismantled Hamas, and although it has not finished it off in its entirety, it nevertheless greatly diminished its militaristic might. Further, it masterfully decapitated Hezbollah and has eliminated some of the most dangerous leaders and enemies, not only Israel, but of the free world. With surgical precision, it decimated the militia's leadership, crippled its forces, and left its stockpile of missiles in ruins. Finally, Iran's latest strike against Israel is giving Israel the opportunity to respond accordingly and truly proportionately. Please note that proportionality should and hopefully will be determined by the state of Israel and not by its cowardly and undecisive allies. Today, Iran is not the same as it was 10 days ago. Dear friends, our enemies are going to have to be forced to accept the new reality and adapt to the fact that we are not going anywhere. We Jews are here to stay. Whether in Israel or here in the messy anti-Semitic world called Jewish diaspora, we're here to stay, to be, because Israel is here to stay. Israel, which has been heroically and with dignity of true warriors fighting our fight for us on our behalf and on behalf of all those who want to live in a society free of terror. And even though fanatical teachers of Hamas and Hezbollah ideology based on hatred and death are unperishable evils, it is still possible to greatly weaken and even eliminate those who carry the message of this irrational, self-devouring hatred. And this is exactly what Israel has been doing. So if we look back at this year without diving into the complexities of the war, what do we see? We see a small, ultra-modern, democratic nation surrounded by hostile states that openly threaten Israel and America. These tyrannical states despise everything we hold so dear, including freedom of choice and fundamental rights for women and gay communities. Despite facing such overwhelming odds, this tiny Israel fights for its people, its land, its hostages, and for something as sacred as the return of the dead hostages for proper burial. This entire year, Israel has been fighting its existential battle on behalf of Israelis and Jews all over the world who have been facing despicable acts of anti-Semitism. Israel has been fighting this war alone. Even its well-wishing allies seem to have forgotten already the horrors of October 7th, the mutilated bodies of Israeli children, women and the elderly, as well as the tortured and raped young girls and their mothers. The fate of the 100 hostages still held captive in the Gaza tunnels seem to be a secondary concern compared to the incidental deaths of Palestinian and Lebanese civilians. The world has seemed to have forgotten who had started this war and the manner in which it had started. Today, like no other time, Israel needs true, strong, and honest allies who trust Israel and don't try restrain it out of calculating and cynical self-interest. Had America or the United Kingdom ever found itself in the situation of true existential threat, No other country or political body on earth would be able to push them toward self-restraint. The fate of Israel affects the fate of Jews all over the world. Israel, again and again, tells the world that we Jews matter, despite our small numbers, and despite what has happened to us, and despite what has been happening to us for the past 2 millennia. We are a sovereign nation, and we, and only we, shall determine our fate. Never again shall we be enslaved. Our fate will never be in the hands of other people and other nations. Our nation shall never depend on the mercy of other people. As Jews, we will not allow ourselves to be taken away, humiliated, or abused because we have a country of our own that will protect us from our enemies. The fate of the Jewish people has always been the extreme balancing act between the survival and extermination. And in between these two extremes, we Jews have sometimes managed to make a life for ourselves. Thus, our identity is rooted in life, in how we value it, how we fight for it, and whom we trust with it. We are not a cult of death, but a nation of life. We search and find meaning in everything life throws at us, even in suffering and tragedy. Without understanding suffering, it would have been impossible for Jewish people to comprehend humanity and consequently value of human life, the most important value in Jewish law. This year, October 7th, falls during the high holidays between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. What does this signify? Do we need to seek a meaning in this peculiar, sorrowful, tragic lunar coincidence? I don't know. 10 days of awe, 10 days of repentance. One of the ongoing themes of the days of awe is the concept that God writes our names into the book of life, writing down who will live and who will die, who will have a good life and who will have a bad one for the next year. These books are written out until the Rosh Hashanah and sealed on Yom Kippur. But during these 10 days of awe, we can alter God's decree. And therefore, what we feel, say, and do today on this October 7th as Jews and as a Jewish nation, during these days, it is sacred. And I think that this notion today for us Jews transcends beyond religion. There are those among us who are religious and those who are not. There are those who believe in God and those who don't. And some people are angry with him and argue with him about the injustice and cruelty that had befallen our nation and enveloped the world with hopeless sadness. But maybe today, by coming together and showing up for Israel and for the Jewish people, God may look down upon us and write this as a good deed, inscribing us into one of his good books, because we are saying yes to a nation that chooses life over death, not only for its own people, but for everyone who chooses the unbearable lightness of freedom over the despairing abyss of tyranny.
My friends, is that a ferocious Jewish lioness? Is that a ferocious Jewish lioness? And I want every Jewish woman here in the audience to copy Anya's example of wearing a Magen David wherever you go. Never fear, never cower, never bend, and never surrender. Am Yisrael Chai! Am Yisrael Chai! Am Yisrael Chai!